This is Tuned Into the Land, the California Rangeland Trust podcast. Here, we will dig into a variety of topics with the partners, conservationists, and ranchers who demonstrate every day, through their words and actions, the importance of conserving California's working lands. Tune in each month to learn more about our mission and how you can get involved in preserving the future of the Golden State for generations to come.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Tune Into the Land. I am your host, Michael Delbar, CEO of the California Rangeland Trust. While sustainable is something America's ranchers and farmers strive to be and have for a long, long time, it is a word now that gets thrown into a lot of our conversations. But what does sustainability mean, and why is it important to be sustainable in the agricultural industry? There are so many facets to sustainability that we could spend hours having that conversation. Well, today, we hope to answer some of those questions and take a glance into what sustainability means to beef ranchers across the country. Our guest today is Dr. Samantha Werth. Sam is the Executive Director of the U.S. Roundtable for Sustainable Beef and the Senior Director of Sustainability at the National Cattlemen's Beef Association, or NCBA for short. So, Sam, welcome.
Thank you very much, Michael. I'm happy to be here.
Sam and I spent a few days a couple weeks ago together at the National Cattlemen's Beef Association annual Cattle Con, and it was great to meet Sam and get a chance to know her and a little bit more about the roundtable. So if you could, Sam, tell our listeners a little bit more about yourself.
Sure. So I am a native to California. I actually grew up in San Diego. I'm one of those weird kids that didn't come from ag, but fell in love with it when they went to school. So I went up to UC Davis for school and ended up doing my bachelor's, master's, and PhD out there studying beef cattle production and a huge emphasis on beef sustainability. I worked with Frank Mitlerner and Jim Olchin out there on a lot of my research. So all of that to say, it brought me to where I am today. I get to wear two hats, as many of us do these days, as the executive director for the U.S. Roundtable for Sustainable Beef, as well as the executive director for National Cattlemen's Beef Association, or I should say, executive director of sustainability.
So can you tell us a little bit more on the history of the U.S. Roundtable for Sustainable Beef? Why was it started?
So we started the roundtable, and I say we just because it's my baby now, but the roundtable began in 2015. Really, it started through a global roundtable meeting had occurred out in Denver, where we're based, and several of us across the beef industry got together and started talking about, hey, we need to do something like this in the U.S., right? We need a place where we can convene people from across the beef value chain to talk about sustainability, talk about what's happening in the world, how it impacts us, and what we can do to really thrive, as the world continues to grow and change.
So to you and to the roundtable, what does sustainable mean? How do you define that?
Yeah. So, and that's defined in, as you alluded to earlier, in many different ways, right? It means something different to everybody. We like to talk about the three pillars of sustainability, economic, social, and environmental pillars. But really what sustainability means is really what ranchers have been doing for years, right? Leaving it better than you got it. Right. So taking care of your land, taking care of your animals, taking care of your people, and doing it in a way that is going to hopefully make you some money and make you happy and help feed the world.
I know at several cattle cons ago, one of the opening sessions had a panel on sustainability. And I think that was the first time that such a panel was presented at Cattle Con. And it was a wonderful panel. I think that really hit home for so many of the attendees, of the ranchers that were there. And I remember it to this day. It was really impressive, the work that the roundtable was doing.
Yeah. We've been really building momentum ever since we started in 2015. We've developed a ton of resources. I really think we're kind of a hidden gem I guess. I hope that we can start, getting more people to know who we are and what we have available. But we've created on our website resources for sustainability modules for every single sector of the beef industry. We have a beef sustainability framework that highlights, everything that you really want to take into consideration as you think about sustainability and how to advance in your sustainability journey, either as a producer or a retailer. What are the questions you want to ask yourself? And then what are resources available to you today to help you get where you want to go? And we have a lot of tools like that on our website to really, really push for sustainability across the U.S.
You mentioned the diversity of stakeholders. And if one looks at the website and sees the makeup of the Roundtable, you can see that there really is a diversity of stakeholders throughout the beef supply chain. Why is that so important to have all of these aspects of the industry included in this conversation?
It's critically important to get everybody at the table. And it really is the beauty of the Roundtable that we're able to do that, because it's an opportunity for people to have open and honest discussions and be able to meet you where you're at, right? So a producer can sit at a table with an executive from a major retail food supply company, and they can have an honest conversation about, hey, this is what I'm doing on my land. This is why I do it that way. And kind of talk through, here are our challenges. How do we help each other without it coming back on the producer, right? How do we support one another and grow in this space without it ultimately leading to challenges or failures on the producer side?
Thinking back to that sustainability panel several years ago, one of those large retail chain representatives was asked the question, how do they define sustainability? And I was struck by their answer was, we're not here to define sustainability. We want you, the producer, to help us define what is sustainability. And I thought that really said a lot about that working relationship with all those aspects of the supply chain.
Yeah, no, that really does speak a lot to how our Roundtable operates. We really, while we have a lot of work going on within each sector of the beef supply chain, we are having conversations constantly across each sector to see, where do we plug in with each other? How do we advance this together? But in a way where everyone feels that they've set their goals for themselves, right? That they're empowered to do what's going to work for them and not what somebody from some other sector is telling them they must do.
So there are a lot of goals that the Roundtable has set forth. You have a very intriguing strategic plan that you've established. What are some of those goals of the Roundtable?
Yeah, so we have set goals across each of our high priority indicators of sustainability. So the Roundtable kind of takes those 3 pillars of sustainability a step further and characterizes 6 priority indicators: air, land, water, employee safety and well-being, animal health and well-being, as well as efficiency and yield. And we've set goals, not only overarching goals across each of those high priority indicators, but we've set sector targets under each goal. So they really are quite a mouthful of goals. Our producer focused ones for air, land, and water are actually really hyper focused around written grazing management plans. So we aim to have 385 million acres covered under a written grazing management plan by 2050. And right now we're really engaged in a lot of work to help support producers on this journey, and also to support research that helps us to demonstrate the value of that plan, right? So why does a written grazing management plan help us reach our climate neutrality goal? We're looking into ways to support research to kind of look at carbon sequestration and how different management practices might enhance carbon sequestration or enhance the land cover, different things like that, to really support efficient growth of an animal and also sequestering carbon and minimizing overall emissions.
So recognizing, of course, that the Roundtable is relatively young, what successes have you experienced so far with this approach?
Several. I mean, I think we've got an image I like to share when I do presentations that is the timeline of the roundtable, and we've really every year we've done something to be very proud of, from developing that framework that I mentioned to developing the modules that I mentioned, and now our goals. Every year we're doing something big, at least feels big to us, and something that is ultimately going to help producers and help others across the beef value chain to really move the needle on this beef sustainability space. And we keep working on that now with our goals work, trying to figure out how do we track progress, how do we support research that's going to support those goals, and how do we keep pushing forward, continuously improving.
There seems to be a huge misconception out there that the beef industry is one of the leading causes of climate change. We see it. I see it daily. I know you see it. We all see it in comments and particularly in social media posts, where cows get the blame. How is the roundtable working to educate not only our producers but consumers about the reality of the beneficial use of livestock grazing for climate?
So we really focus at the roundtable on internally. We focus across the beef value chain, and our goal, or the way that we really work to get the word out to consumers, is by providing our members with the tools and resources they need to be able to communicate back out. So we don't focus as much on the consumer, but more so internally, of really helping to provide resources and learning tools for different people across the beef value chain to better understand what it is a rancher does, why they do it, so that they're able to kind of think through when they're up against pressures, say from a financial institution, or they're setting science-based targets, that they're looking towards the roundtable as that reliable source to provide them with credible resources and good advice on where they need to take that.
Serving on the roundtable are some pretty impressive parties. Do you see, stepping away from the producer members, do you see a lot of awakening, so to speak, some education amongst a lot of these more larger corporate folks about the reality of livestock production?
Yeah, we definitely do. I would say we hold every year a General Assembly meeting, and part of that is a full day beef sustainability tour. And that usually will include a stop at some sort of cattle operation, potentially a packing plant, or some other tie-in to the beef value chain, to kind of help us tell a full picture of this is how your food is produced, right? And those tours have been just so valuable for those further down the supply chain to really get that firsthand look at here's how an animal is raised, here are the concerns that people are dealing with and why it matters. And it really does go a long ways to helping think through on their end when they are up against these pressures from different external organizations, that they're able to be informed and able to really push for what makes sense, what's science-based, and what's actually going to help propel the industry, right?
And those boots on the ground tours are hard to beat when educating folks that are typically get their information off the internet or the nightly news and not out there in the field to see just what is really happening out there and how hard these ranchers are working to be sustainable.
Yeah, it really goes a long ways to see and to be able to have that opportunity to talk to the person on the ground doing it.
There are a number of high priority indicators that are goals of the roundtable. Included in these are air, land, water resources, as you mentioned. So the California Rangeland Trust is part of PORT, or the Partnership of Rangeland Trusts, as we call it. And PORT has conserved over 3 million acres of working rangelands in the American West. And there's 9 members of PORT, state organizations like the California Rangeland Trust that are statewide and have some affiliation with livestock groups. What role do you see these efforts that PORT is involved in playing in the sustainability in the industry? And how does that fit in with the Roundtable's work?
Wow. Where to begin? I would say, short answer is that they have a role in really everything we do, right? That is a huge amount of land, a huge amount of opportunity, right? To be working directly with producers and helping them to do what's best in their unique situations, right? Because what a producer in Southern California is going to do is very different from what someone, up by the Oregon border is going to be doing on their operations, right? So having this group of people who can help to provide information, to link producers up with the different resources that are available is huge. And I think that there's a lot of opportunity there. The Roundtable talks a lot about collaboration, right? We are a multi-stakeholder initiative. So we have a lot of different groups that are part of or that are at our table. And if we're not all collaborating, then we're not going to get anything done, right? So there's an opportunity there for this sort of group. What you just mentioned, the PORT, right? Partnership of Rangeland.
Right.
I haven't heard that acronym said, but there's a lot of opportunity for those sort of collaborative efforts to really move the needle in the sustainability space. And California in particular, right, faces a lot of challenges, especially when it comes to environmental impacts and policy. So those sorts of partnerships are critical to really making sure that producers are able to do what they're doing and care for the land in a way that's going to benefit society.
Yeah, and I think you are aware of our ecosystem services study that we commissioned a couple years ago that found that just in 306,000 acres of our portfolio, which today is over 371,000 acres, just of that 306,000, the annual benefit, monetary benefit to Californians from those ecosystem services, that clean air, that clean water, that open space, that food and fiber production is $1.44 billion. That's annual. And that's when we throw those numbers out there to those policymakers, particularly here in California, it really gets some attention. And it should, rightfully so, get attention, because that's when some of these more urban legislators ask, well, why should I be concerned with what Rangeland Trust is doing, what the ranching industry is doing? I have all this information I get already, but why should I be concerned with what you're up to? So when we say, because these are your constituents that are benefiting from this work, not only just Rangeland Trust, but others when it comes down to agricultural sustainability.
Yeah, no, it shows a huge amount of that sort of data and information has a huge amount of power, especially in the political sphere, to really tell our story in a way that is evidence-based, right? You can't argue the science that there are several benefits beyond, even beyond just the animals that are produced for food, but really the benefit to the land. That's something that we are always working on. How do we better communicate about that and demonstrate the value? And we'll start. There's a lot of talk nowadays, right, on carbon markets, and we like to talk through added value markets, right? Thinking through what are all of the things that we're getting, not just this myopic view on carbon, but also thinking through the other benefits that without animals, without cattle, we're not getting on the land.
Exactly. No, that's a great point. What has been one of the greatest challenges that you or the Roundtable has faced in your efforts?
I would say our biggest challenge is time. A lot of these bigger companies have very, very lofty greenhouse gas emission goals, right? They're setting targets and goals that need to be met by 2030. And to be completely frank, we don't have all of the research that we need to be able to accurately inform on those targets and goals in a way where we can help them to meet their goals, right? We can keep working as hard as we can, but in 7 years, are we going to have the answers that they need for their commitments? I don't know. It's a huge challenge, and that's something we're working on every day.
And so are the members of PORT and trying to find ways to be or provide additive benefit to our landowner partners. They have a conservation easement on the land. That land's going to always be undeveloped. It's going to be like it is today. But as you mentioned, all those other benefits, whether it's the wildlife habitat or that the water, how does that landowner monetize those benefits that he and she are providing to of all people, in all these areas? So finding a ways in which to maximize that sustainability part of the ranching industry.
Yeah, I talk a lot about, I've kind of gone down this kind of path of thinking about how do we optimize rather than maximize. So it's really easy, right, to focus on one thing. But with beef cattle production and with sustainability, right, there are so many different factors and so many trade-offs of different decisions that can be made. It's really how do we, given everyone's unique situation, find that sweet spot where they're optimizing animal productivity and they're optimizing land management. And then because of that, they're optimizing an economic payout, right? Like if we're going to get into all of these carbon or added value markets, how do we make sure that we're optimizing and we're not leaning any one direction to tip the scale and away from where we want it to go?
Right. It's the right balance.
Yep. Which cattle producers have been, doing for centuries, right?
Exactly. So how does one become a member of the Roundtable?
So we have an online website, usrsb.org. There's a membership tab there. Anyone is welcome. We have members for individual ranchers are welcome to join. And we really we have over 50% of our membership are producers, and we really want that producer voice to be at the table, right? Because we want to be able to have people there, the boots on the ground, to talk about what they're doing, why they're doing it, to further down the supply chain. So if anyone's interested in joining, we've got information on our website, and always happy to meet and talk about what we're doing and how to get involved and where we can help.
So you mentioned earlier the annual General Assembly. That's coming up in May. Can you tell us a little bit more about that event and where it's going to be?
Yeah, so that event is going to be held May 2nd to 4th in Boise, Idaho. Really excited at the Grove Hotel. Our theme this year is collaborating for continuous improvement. So I talked a bit earlier about collaboration and how important that is to really advancing anything in this sustainability space. And that's going to be a huge focus of this meeting. We'll have a really fun full day sustainability tour going through a feed yard in southern Idaho, a packing plant just outside of Boise, and a reception at a Birds of Prey Center. So a little bit of fun there too. We'll get a raptor show. And then our programming, I'm very excited for. We're going to have a few really cool sessions on one, climate smart commodities, the USDA grants that have come out, really talking to some of those involved in those and what that means for our industry. And we'll also have you're the first to hear this. We have Jack Bobo with the Nature Conservancy will be coming to deliver our keynote on May 4th, really talking through beef sustainability and what it means both within the U.S. and abroad. So really excited to have him join us at this event.
Sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm excited.
We want to thank Sam for joining us today. We hope that you enjoyed this episode of Tune Into the Land. If you're interested in learning more about the U.S. Roundtable for Sustainable Beef, visit www.usrsb.org. Sam, thank you very much. It's a pleasure visiting with you again today and hope to see you again soon.
Thanks, Michael.
Well, that shuts the gate on another episode of Tune Into the Land. You know what to do. Be sure to hit that follow button and subscribe to be notified when our next episode will be released. This is Michael Delbar, and we'll talk to you again next time.